Hey everyone, and welcome to my next video in my series on how to make a scenic base with a forest kind of theme. Alright, so if you haven't checked out part 1, I would highly recommend going back and watching that. Otherwise, this is going to be a little bit confusing for you. So as you can see, what we've added already is these pine bark chips that are forming the basis of this kind of second tier that the sort of stormtrooper leader is standing on. He's kind of pointing in the direction for the other troopers to advance, or pointing in the direction of the rebel base or something. And then you got this guy in the foreground here with the heavy blaster. So and the tree on the side there. So the look that I was going for with this is it's kind of the branches have broken off. You can tell there's a bit of conflict going on already in the forest, and so you kind of building a narrative around some of the objects that are on your base, which is always a really nice thing to go with. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is working a lot with milliput. And then we're going to also be adding a lot of the kind of what I would refer to as the secondary kind of components of the scenic base. That's adding things like these little twigs and just smaller kind of rocks and other little bits and bobs like that. So yeah, we'll go and start on using some milliput. Okay, so if you've never used milliput before, I would definitely recommend trying to get a hold of some. I usually go for the yellow-grey one, and so once you mix it together, it's just a lot like green stuff, a two-part kind of thing that you'd mix together, and then use it to kind of for all sorts of things, but for this purpose we're going to be using it to kind of sculpt some of the base, so to speak. So one of the areas that I know that I definitely want to fill up is this gap in the back here. And basically start puttying up some of these gaps. So it's pretty straightforward. We're just putting in some of the gaps, depending on your composition and the look that you're going for. Just filling in any areas that you think are going to need. This is to build the initial kind of structure of what you're going for, and then later on, you might be adding, gravel or sand or other sort of hobby kind of ground cover materials, and so this is just a matter of pressing it in, and I'm basically kind of going for a bit of a dry fit, so to speak, and just making sure that where I'm placing it is definitely where I want to be placing it before I start to sculpt it out, so to speak. So I'm building some up around the base of the tree here, actually, because what I want to do is eventually take some other, I might just fit them in now, let's take some other bits of wood material and start to kind of create with whatever kind of works, is create kind of like the roots of the trunk kind of coming out from the tree there. Let's have a look at what I've got. So I got my box of just random bits and pieces of wood. So what I'm looking for to create these the kind of big top parts of the roots is bits of stick that'll have a bit of a curve in it. Get that bit off the end, so that as I stick it down, it's going to kind of make sense with the contours of the tree and the base itself. So it should kind of fit in like that. Even bending that a bit to kind of make it work. Not quite as long as I'd like it to be. Just making sure that guy sits there alright. Still. Cool. And so what I'm going to do is just put a bit of super glue on there. Just to kind of try and fuse it with the milliput a bit. Now milliput's still quite soft, but at least this will help it to adhere to it a bit. Alright, so that's, yeah, so just adding a nice little extra detail like that. I'm not really worrying too much right now about making everything look too, making it look too smooth. No real need to worry about that right now. Alright, so we've placed all of the milliput down now. I just spent a little bit of time getting these roots happening. So, you know, obviously because these bits of the sticks there aren't meeting up completely, I've just put a little bit of milliput there, which I will sculpt in a little while once it's set a little bit, just to kind of blend it in with the rest of the tree. This is kind of, I don't know, I guess it's kind of a bit more of an advanced thing. You don't really have to do that if you're too worried about venturing into the kind of sculpting work that's involved in doing that. It's going to be pretty simple, but yeah, I just thought I'd show you anyway, because it's a pretty cool little thing that you can do. Yeah, so just taking your sculpting tool, the beauty of milliput is that you can just use water to lubricate it, because it does act a lot like a clay. So just, yeah, a little bit of water on the end of the sculpting tool. Basically, we're just kind of blending that out, and even kind of create some variations in the way it's sitting. For the most part, the areas where this milliput is sitting, we're going to eventually cover up with sand, other kind of other basing materials anyway, so I'm not super worried about how this is looking. It's not about kind of getting it nice and smooth. It's more about just kind of getting the volumes where you want them. And in some of these kind of gaps here, I'm probably going to be adding a bit of sand in there anyway, so I haven't added too much in there. This spot here I want to try and smooth out to kind of create a bit of an extension of the flat surface of the base, the negative area there, just because it was quite a wide open area. And then eventually, as I paint this black, I'll be painting that black as well, if I can get it smooth enough. But that would involve sanding it later on, once it's fully dried, which you'd allow for about 24 hours at least, for it to fully cure. So not anytime soon. So this step, is really quite simple. It's just kind of blending everything in a little bit, making sure it all sits nicely. I'm just going to put it more in here. I've got this root coming out here, and it kind of comes to an end, so I just want to fill it in, and kind of give the impression like it's, not just coming to an end, but it's kind of going into the ground a little bit more. Kind of help it to make a little bit more sense. Cool. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that so far. Not a lot involved in that step. Alright, so we'll move on to the next step, which is adding some extra little details and stuff. Alright, so I've also just added some of these other little stones around the place, and they kind of look like cobblestones. I'm going for kind of a creek bed sort of look on the lower area here. This guy is standing in, and so what I want to do now is just add a bit of texture to this bare resin here. And so what I'm using is this one, Vallejo Earth Texture, and so it's a paste, and not unlike the Citadel ones that you can get. It's probably a bit finer than those ones, but basically use it in the same way. Use some sort of tool or paintbrush or something to scoop it out, and then basically just start spreading it around. I think these products come in a variety of colours, but I mean, you can very easily just paint over what you've got. Paint over this colour if it's not what you were looking for. Hence why I'm applying it before I've primed this base. But if you're using it to just do bases on some tabletop models or something like that, then you can apply it after you've painted your model. And then if you just want to use the colour that already is, and just dry brush over it or something like that. It's just a really nice product. I would recommend it, and quite cheap. I mean, when you think that this costs only a little bit more than what one of your little Citadel pots cost, you're definitely getting a good mileage out of it for what you pay for it. Cool. And so you can build up a bit of a variation in height with it, just by going a bit thicker in whatever areas you want to do it. I'm going to get some in here as well. And then it's easy enough to wash off if you've applied it in some areas that you don't want it to be. That mealy part hasn't fully dried yet, but it's not a big deal. I'm being quite gentle with it, and it'll all kind of dry together anyways, so there's no real harm in doing that. Alright, so we're almost done here. As I mentioned, I wanted to apply it over basically all of the milliput area, because it's just, quite a smooth sort of surface. It's not gonna look a whole lot interesting, so I've just added that over the top. I'm also using this to kind of fill out some of these gaps and things, just to make it look a bit more natural, like it's kind of dirt setting in those areas. Cool, so what I want to do, I'm just going to wash my brush off. As I mentioned, it's quite easy to wash off any areas that you don't want it on, so it's kind of gone a bit too much over on some of these cobblestones, and they're kind of becoming a bit unrecognizable, so just going to kind of brush it off with a damp brush in some of those areas. The last thing I want to do for this stage is actually just take some of my sand mix and just get a bit of variation in the grains of sand that are on the base, and just kind of sprinkle this over the top. Otherwise it's all kind of just could end up being just too much of the kind of fine sand, and not enough kind of variation in how it looks. So this just helps to break it up a bit, and I'm just going to tap that off. Cool. So that should create a little bit of variation in that sense. Okay, so now that all that's applied, what I want to do now is start applying some more of those kind of secondary kind of objects as I described them. And so what I want to add is some of these sticks to represent, fallen branches and parts of trees and stuff like that. So I've just got that guy on the top there just as a reminder of where he's going to sit. I don't want to stick him in there too much, but I've just kind of softly placed his feet in there just to give me an indicator of where he's going to go in the end, so that I can keep an eye on where I'm placing these. So I want to create a bit of a variation in the placement. So some of these bits along the edge here that have they've come off trees and they're just sitting along the side of the creek bed there. When I start applying these kind of steps, it's very much unplanned, and it's kind of just going with the flow of it, so to speak, and just going with what looks good compositionally, and making sure you're not overcrowding any areas too much, but that everything kind of just fits together nicely. basically just using your eye to kind of, you know, create what you think looks nice, what looks natural. It really helps to look at reference photos. In this instance, you know, I can easily take, I've used references from the Star Wars Battlefront video game, which was quite a massive inspiration for doing this. I haven't played that game for a while, but when I did play it, my favourite map was Endor, and I just because it's just a beautiful, rich, really nice looking environment, and it just reminded me of, as a child, I used to love the third film, where they actually have the battle on Endor. I always loved that. So that was a huge inspiration for wanting to do this. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that at like that for now. I don't want to get too crowded, like I said. And with him there on that kind of minimal kind of area that he's sitting on, I don't want to put too much in there. Yeah, because it'll look a bit too busy, I think. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it at that, I think. All right, so that is pretty much what we're going to cover for this video. We actually did cover quite a lot. This one's going to be a bit longer than the last video. So the only other thing that I would do at this stage, before we start kind of moving into more of the refining and then priming and painting stage, is just to seal the wood, and I would use roughly 50-50 water and PVA mix for that. But probably more like 70% water, 30% PVA glue, and that would help just to seal it, make sure it all kind of stays together, but also remove some of the porousness of the surface, and so it doesn't soak up the paint as much. And I would apply that to all of the parts of the wood. And that would also be nice to apply over this loose sand that I've applied afterwards, because although that earth texture paint does have some adhesiveness to it, you're probably going to want to go over that and just make sure that that's all going to stay there. Yeah, and the other thing that I do want to apply as well is some fern leaves, which I think would be quite fitting for this environment. If you're looking at inspirational and reference photos for this kind of environment, they do fit quite well. But I'm waiting on a one of the hole puncher little tools from Green Stuff World. But when that arrives, when I get my hands on that, I will show you guys what I'm going to do with that, and that'll be before I start moving into the next stages anyway. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too much to digest. It's quite simple, simple steps, and just remembering that at this stage you're kind of bringing everything together, blending it all together. You're adding those secondary kind of elements. What I mean by that is these cobblestone rocks that I added, and the sticks. So the initial stages was us just kind of mapping out where everything was going to sit and getting the composition right, and getting those initial kind of volumes, so to speak, of the base sorted out. So yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed that. I hope that you'll follow along in the series, and you'll check out the next video that comes out, which will be more in refining and then moving on to priming and painting. So yeah, thank you so much for your continued support, and I hope that you get some use out of this video, and I'll see you next time.